Okay, I'm going to create a new document. This is just to show you how to do text. So I'm just going to start from scratch. I'm going to go to print. I'm going to do 8.5 by 11, create. I'm going to flip my composition horizontal. So image, rotate image 90 clockwise will get me there. Boom. Okay, I'm going to go to my text tool. Remember, behind the text tool, if you did your tools like I did, there's the horizontal text tool and the vertical text tool. First, I'm just going to make my box. That tells me where my text is going to go. Now, let's go to my layers real fast. Let's say I don't have this in there, so I'm going to get rid of this. So first thing you want to do is add your character palette. It's way better to manipulate your text when you have your character palette open. I like to go ahead and group it in my other palette. So go to window, go to character. It's going to pop up. You can leave it floating around on its own, or you can group it in your little group over here. I'm going to drag it up here and group it in here. Now I like to manipulate my text from here and then up on the top bar. The top bar's got some features that you'll want to use too. Go back to my layers. Now I don't want to do it in my background layer, but when you create text, it will automatically make a layer for you. I'm going to drag it. I'm going to pick my font. I've loaded a lot of fonts on mine. I don't know if it'll let you guys load fonts. If it's your own machine, you can go and get fonts. If it's not your machine, it's probably going to tell you have to have approval for that. Let's go to, doesn't really matter. We'll go to Broadway. Now I have it set at 72 DPI, I mean 72 pixels. So there's my 72 pixels, which is actually really, really big. If I want to manipulate that, you have to highlight your text before you can manipulate it. If I just try to drag my size over here, and you could type in this box too. So let's type in 200 points. You can see it did nothing. The reason it did nothing is because I didn't have it highlighted. So I'm going to highlight it, drag 200, enter, and there's my 200 point font. That's the first one on there. So you can change your font. You can change it here, or you can change it up top. And then it's got your regular italics, bold, all of your little features. You can see this font only has one with it. I'm going to pick up one that has more options. We'll go to something else. Yeah, that one has a ton. Okay, so don't worry about the one that's underneath that. The metrics one, that's the only one I don't hardly ever use. Your up and down is going to stretch it vertically. So if I highlight it, and start playing around with this, do 20, 120, it'll stretch your font up and down. The next one is if you want to like jack with the letter in your sentence. So if I highlight these two L's and I change this number, you can easily use your arrow keys to go up and down. You can see it's raising or lowering. Let's go down. My letters below or above of what the actual normal thing is. I'm going to put that back on 0. The next one is the spaces between sentences. So let me knock this down real fast. And I'm going to drag this over. If I drag this, it'll drop my paragraph to right there. Okay, on this guy, so this is gonna play around with your space between sentences. So if I start changing it, you can see it will either crunch it or make it bigger. You can see that doesn't look right. Go to, like, let's say we want more space. There's 36. I like to keep it on auto unless you know what you're doing on this one. So basically, let me make sure nobody's trying to get in on the Zoom. Is everybody there? Okay, good. We're missing, who are we missing? Matthew Rivers. Oh,
I'm here.
You're here. Never mind. Okay, so that's the space between sentences. The next is going to stretch the text. So if I highlight my text and I start playing with this number, you can see it's going to put space between the letters of my text. And then this one right here will actually stretch my text. So let me put it back on 0. So it stretched out the whole word. Okay, so that's the little character palette. Also, there's some shortcut keys down on there. These little guys right here, you can see it'll start doing all these different options. This little row below your color palette. By the way, if you want to change the color, obviously highlight your text. And then double click on your color palette. Change it to whatever color you want. And then there's some more features right here, like your italic, crisp, smooth, bunch of different ones. Okay, so that's that one. Now up top, there's more features. I like this little bar. So over to your paragraph, obviously you have your flush left, your centered, and your flush right. If you are typing a sentence or you have a paragraph, this little guy I use it a lot when I'm designing logos. I used to design my logos in Illustrator, but I started using Photoshop because it has all the features Illustrator has now. So I can go to this little guy on your warp text, and I can go to arc, and it'll automatically put it in an arc. It'll do a lower arc. It'll do a bulge. So it's got all these features in your warp text at the top menu item. And then you can switch this. You can change percentages on all this. Let's go negative. So you can play around with all that on your warp feature on your text up top in this little bar. It'll also do 3D. We'll get into 3D maybe later on, but not today. Okay, so let's say I want to start making my text look beautiful. Let's get rid of this palette over here. So in your layers, when you create text, it automatically names it for you, which is really nice. Unless you have that same word repeated, then it gets complicated. Then you need to change the name, and you can change the name yourself. So if I double click on my layers palette, I get all these features. And let's go ahead and make my background gray, because some of these aren't going to show up on the white. So I'm going to create a new layer. Okay. I'm going to drag it behind. Select all. Let it fill. Could use the paint bucket tool. There's lots of different ways. Going to fill it gray. Now my features on my text will show up. Control deselect or Command deselect. If you double click on this, I want to bevel and emboss it, which is a really nice feature. You have to be in the actual menu item palette in order to see what's going on. So right now it's just in my blendings. blending options and I'm not in my bevel and emboss palette. So if I click on my bevel and emboss palette, now I can see what's going on in my bevel and emboss palette. You have to be in each one of these palettes in order to see what's going on. So now if I start playing around with the depth on my text, you can see I have an inner bevel, so it looks like it's cut out. I can go up or down. I can play around with the size of the emboss, all different ones on this little feature. It's actually called effects, and you can turn your effects on and off in your text layer right there. I can turn that little thing off. Let me go okay. So if I don't want it, or if I want to duplicate the layer and have one that has it, one that doesn't, but play around with that because there's all different kinds of features on here. There's a stroke. I can stroke it. I have to tell it what color. Let's say I want a red stroke on it. I could put a red stroke on it. So now I have a pink stroke, and I can tell what size I want my stroke, how many pixels I want my stroke. For some reason it is not showing up. Let's go with inner shadow. But anyway, there's all different little features on, if you double click on your layer on the effects palette. Okay, so let's say I want to do a custom shape. Let's say I have a triangle, not triangle, but let's say I have an oval and my little warp feature up here doesn't fit my oval, and I want to actually make my text wrap around the oval. So that's when I would use the pen tool. And actually I'll do a wave that's a little more complex. So I'll make a path with my pen tool. And then now if I grab my text tool and I click on that little dot down here, it will enter and follow my path. So I can create, it's not working. Maybe I got it too big. Let me get out of that real fast. Make my text smaller. Let's go to the layer. There we go. I'll make it bigger so you guys can see it. So there's basically how I make my text follow any custom path I want to make, which is pretty cool. And then remember, if you want to edit it, you got to highlight it and then make it bigger, whatever you want to do. All right. Does anybody have a question?
Will this demo be in the video section of the?
Yeah, I'll record. It's already being recorded right now, so it takes like an hour, I think, for it to finally process. So I will put it under resources, and I'll put it under demo, even though it should be under announcements. I'll probably put it under both. So I'll put it under announcements, and then I'll put it under demo too.
Thanks.
Because May is missing, and she will definitely need this. So if you're going to have text in your assignment, watch that so you know how to manipulate text. I went over it really fast. There's lots of other things you can do too. We'll get into that later. Or if you have a custom question, email me and I'll try to figure out how to do it. Does anybody have a question about the assignment or the text tool or any other things? Oh yeah, real quick. So on the Photoshop, I didn't teach you guys this, but if you want to do an adjustment layer, let's say you don't want to actually duplicate a layer, you want to like do a saturation adjustment. Let me open an image. Just go to my downloads to see what I got going. Okay, here's a good one. Okay, so we have our image basically. Let's say I want to do adjustment layer and I don't want to background with or mess with my background layer. I can click on that little sun down at the bottom basically. And that's going to create a new layer when let's go to brightness contrast. And let's say I want to lower the brightness a little bit. And then I want to up the contrast.
We can't see your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll start completely over. Yeah, if I'm ever doing that, be sure and tell me because. Okay, I'm going to start from scratch again. So I'll close this out. So file, open. I'm going to open up a photograph. So if I don't want to mess with my background layer, I'll get this thing to go down the bottom. There we go. I can do an adjustment layer with either saturation, brightness, contrast, any of those features I was showing you guys, or any of these little features right here in the layers palette. You can notice it's all turned off since I have my layers locked. So I can do an adjustment layer. So on this bottom little chunk down here, that little circle with the line through it is your adjustment layer. And then I can go to hue saturation and you can see it automatically created a layer for me. And then now if I say I want to brighten my saturation, I'll go 25, enter. And now just that layer has that adjustment in it and I didn't actually affect the original layer. And you can do that with lots of different things. You can do it with posterize. So I could do a posterized layer. Can do whatever levels I want on my posterized. Let's do 8, I always like 8. And that'll break up the image into like 8 separate colors. So if you're painting a mural, whenever I paint murals, I always posterize my image. So when I'm painting it, it's way easier to paint it because it's breaking it up into just flat color instead of gradient color. Okay, so that's basically how you do an adjustment layer. That little circle, click on it, and then the menu will pop up, and then it'll create an adjustment without it actually affecting your background layer. Okay, anybody have any questions?
So are we allowed to use images from the internet for this project, or should it all be hand created?
You can, but websites, I might have already given these. Pexels is one, P-E-X-E-L-S. It's royalty-free images. And then another one is Morguefile, M-O-R-G-U-E-F-I-L-E. There's a Facebook page that I'm a part of right now that's images for artists. But try not to get one that's like real noticeable. If you want to do an art on art piece where you're like taking a famous painting or a famous piece of art, that's fine. I don't mind that.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, get rolling on your projects. Goodbye. Mr. Adrian, I did a demo. I will post that under resources or announcements. So if you want to watch it, it's on the text tool and it's on the adjustment layers. Did you hear me? I'll text it.
Hi, Michael. Sorry.
What's up? I was typing a big long thing. I'll just tell you, it'd be way easier because I'm a horrible typer.
Okay.
I did a demo on the text tool and I did a demo on adjustment layers.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be under resources,
Okay.
either announcements or video demos.
Okay.
So watch it. So if you don't know how to use the text tool, you are allowed to use text in this assignment. And work on your exercises in the assignment. Do you have any questions about the assignment or anything?
No, not right now, actually. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So today's a snow day, obviously, and we're online this week. Read the announcements. We may go live again next week as far as back end class. I
Okay.
don't know yet. So I'll keep you posted.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Have a good day.
You too.